Wyatt Langford had another phenomenal day. Nate Eovaldi shoved. It's time for Jack Leiter discourse again. And we got some big news about the two best shortstops in Rangers, well, two of the best shortstops in Rangers franchise history. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into the Rangers winning a series against the Yankees, Nate Eovaldi's contract vesting option getting closer to happening, and big news about Elvis Andrus and Corey Seager, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Now, the Rangers won their second game against the Yankees in this series, meaning they win the series against a team that is very much in the thick of it, while the Rangers are very much not in the thick of things, which in and alone of itself is always fun to beat the Yankees. They are the big baddies of baseball history, and when the Yankees fans get mad and call the Rangers a trash team and, oh, we shouldn't lose to this garbage team, this stupid bad franchise, you can gleefully remind them that your team, the Texas Rangers, has appeared in 3 World Series and won one since the last time the New York Yankees even got to a World Series. So, that's just a fun little note there. Obviously, it would be much more fun if the Rangers were in the thick of things in the AL West chase. Actually, it'd be more fun if the Rangers were 20 games up in the AL West at this point, and this was just about seeding of who's going to get the number 1 seed. But alas, that is not where this season is. That is not where things have gone. Things have gone very much, for the most part, in the crapper. But the Rangers, down this stretch in September, are determined to play some fun baseball, give some hope for a bounce back in 2025, and repeat the pattern of Bruce Bochy in San Francisco of World Series, miss the playoffs, World Series, miss the playoffs, World Series. Although, honestly, I'd just rather go 3-4. I think that would be a little bit more fun for me personally, but this was a good game from Wyatt Langford. Another great game from him, robbing what would have been a fear-inducing 3-run homer at the end of this game that should have never been this close. The Rangers up 10-2 with 2 outs in the 9th inning, and the fact that Matt Fasta was in there and threw 3 straight walks in a game his team was winning 8-2 with 2 outs in the 9th inning. You got to issue some kind of apology for that. I mean, it's truly embarrassing. It wasn't just, not him not throwing strikes. They were long battles. He did get to 2 strikes in all of those walks, but none of the balls that he threw for balls were, particularly borderline pitches. And then Grant Anderson comes in, and he can't get a single out. He allows 3 hits, including a grand slam by Trent Grisham, 1 pitch after a ball that should have been called strike 3. I've never seen an umpire more determined to not call borderline pitches strikes in a blowout game to end the game, I think, ever. But it got down to the wire, 2 runners on base. The Rangers had to bring in their closer to a game. They were up 8 runs with 2 outs. And not just that, they were getting to 2 strikes on basically every batter. So the Rangers were just 1 strike away after 1 strike away after 1 strike away. And then Kirby Yates makes not a great pitch to Giancarlo Stanton, who still was in this game, one of the only top hitters that hadn't been taken out because the game was no longer in doubt. He hits a screaming line drive over there to left field. Wyatt Langford gets on his horse and makes what is almost certainly a home run robbing play, if not at least a 2 RBI double robbing play to end the game. And Yankees fans must absolutely hate this man. Imagine how much they're going to hate him when he's knocking them out in the playoffs next year. I mean, it has been the Wyatt Langford show over the last couple of days. I was lamenting why his WAR was still at 1.5 after hitting a walk-off grand slam. And then I check it after today. It has gone up a whole half a win over the last 2 games. Actually, technically, it was all since last night's game. He is at 2 WAR on the season, and his OPS plus, he is officially an above league average hitter. 706 OPS, a 102 OPS plus. This is a great, great player making strides, leaps and bounds in the final month of his rookie season, where most rookies would hit a wall, and this is the most games he's ever played in a season. He's like, nope, I'm just getting started. I'm getting better. I'm still getting better every single day, which is what you absolutely love to see. Who's also getting better is Nathan freaking Eovaldi. 7 innings of just 2 runs. The only 2 runs he allows are on, a Juan Soto home run, coming after what should have been another called strike 3 that was missed that ended up being one of his 3 walks on the day. Soto's home run was incredibly impressive. It was just a matter of you tip your cap to that hitter. I mean, it was a cutter that was up and away outside the zone, and Juan Soto just took it to the opposite field. Just barely for a home run, but still a home run, an incredible hitter who I would like the Rangers to pay $600 million to come play baseball in Texas for the rest of his natural-born life, or at least natural-born major league career. I don't think that's probably going to happen, but still, it's just a matter of good hitters make good hits sometimes, and you tip your cap. But Nate Eovaldi's 7 innings are the most important thing in this one. He is now officially 7 innings away from his $20 million vesting option next year. Vesting is a player option, so if he so chooses, if he throws 7 more innings from now until the end of the season, he can just come back to Texas on a $20 million option, or he can decline and go to free agency. He has made $17 million per year of base pay, and last year he made over $1.5 million in incentives. I think he will get around that maybe this year. He's going to miss out on the $100,000 All-Star bonus, or $100,000 LCS MVP, or $100,000 Gold Glove. Same with the World Series MVP for $150,000, $150,000. He's not going to get any Cy Young votes, so he's not getting any bonus from that. But the innings limit, that is what triggers this vesting option, is 300 innings combined in last year and this year. And my God, what a great contract this has been for Chris Young to sign him to. Even if Eovaldi declines that vesting option, which I assume he will, he would get probably at least $4 to $5 million more per year in free agency than if he just took this $20 million vesting option next year. Plus, it's more likely that someone will pay him going into his age 35 season for multiple years as opposed to his age 36 season. I hope the Rangers do end up getting him to stick around. It would make Kumar Rocker breaking into the rotation next year a little bit more difficult. It would make Jack Leiter breaking into the rotation next year a little bit more difficult. But again, you never go all year long with the same 5 horses that you brung into the race in your rotation, especially when one of those horses, actually several of those horses next year, will be in their 30s and a little bit prone to the injuries. But Eovaldi has been such a delight to watch this season in what has been mostly a frustrating year, but just getting those wins as a unfortunately scrappy underdog team as the reigning World Series champs, you got to get your enjoyment where you can. I mean, this was an enjoyable win for Texas. Very frustrating that Matt Festa and Grant Anderson couldn't close this one out. The fact that Yates had to even get up and throw a pitch in this one is an abject failure and incredibly frustrating. The fact that it came down to a home run robbery saving from catch from Wyatt Langford to keep it from being a 1-run game when you were up by 8 runs, when you were 1 strike away several times. Incredibly frustrating. But again, this is the nature of the beast from now to the end of this season. The Rangers are dealing with some injuries, some frustrations, some frustrating ends. Speaking of frustrating ends, one former Ranger great is going to retire officially as a Texas Ranger on Friday, and it is one of the best shortstops in franchise history. No, it's not Corey Seager. We're going to talk about that and some Corey Seager news, and of course, some Jack Leiter discourse to get into right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your PrizePicks picks are still live. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks. Run your game. Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. You can catch every pitch of the Rangers taking on the Angels tonight, 7:05 p.m. Jack Gochanowicz of the Angels versus Cody Bradford of the Rangers. You can catch every pitch of the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search Rangers. Now, Elvis Andrus is officially hanging it up. He is not officially retired before this season. I mean, he was still a free agent. I'm honestly a little surprised that nobody signed him this offseason because he's coming off a couple of pretty solid years. I mean, his last year in Texas was deeply frustrating. The 2020 season, which was a disaster for everybody with the Rangers. I mean, outside of, well, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa had a kind of nice year. I seem to remember Lance Lynn having a nice year. Outside of that, it was, quite frankly, pretty terrible for everyone involved. I mean, just 29 games there. And then he was traded in that deal with Oakland, a real weird way to end a very long tenure as one of the most important players in Rangers franchise history. A guy who was on some of the best teams in Rangers franchise history. I mean, this was the Jonah Heim trade back in the day for Dane Acker, Chris Davis, and Jonah Heim. A trade that worked out very, very well for the Rangers and worked out okay, not great for the A's. But a guy who is up there in terms of the most hits in Rangers franchise history, in terms of most doubles, most triples. He does lead in the most stolen bases in franchise history, a record that I think maybe some youngsters, if they can stay healthy, in terms of Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter, might be gunning for that record eventually. But he was such a delight to watch play. I think we kind of forget how good he was and how important he was to those teams because of how it ended. I mean, he's 35 years old now. I mean, his next to last season spent between the White Sox and the A's. I mean, he was a home run hitter. Had the second most home runs he's hit in his career in a season. 17 homers in 145 games, including 9 in 43 with the White Sox. I mean, he had a 773 OPS in those final nearly 200 plate appearances of the 2022 season. Was fine as an everyday shortstop for the White Sox in 2023. Probably be better than what they're rolling out there every day now with the 2024 White Sox. But honestly, a little glad that he didn't end his major league career as a member of the 2024 White Sox, because dear God, what an awful experience to end your career on. But he is retiring officially as a Texas Ranger on Friday. I think it's kind of fitting. It's very fitting that Ron Washington will be in town for that ceremony. I think Elvis Andrus' number will probably be retired one day. I think that he's definitely going to be a shoo-in to the Rangers Hall of Fame if he's not in there already. I can't remember exactly if he has been inducted yet or not. But the joy that I got watching Elvis Andrus play, it is something that was infectious about those teams. Him and Adrian Beltre's relationship was just so special. Just a shout out to a very good career. Probably not a Major League Baseball Hall of Fame career, but still, that does not diminish the joy that he brought to Rangers fans for the 12 seasons that he spent in Texas. But it is some less good news for probably the best shortstop in Rangers franchise history. I mean, maybe you can give A-Rod in his 3 seasons and his 2 MVPs a little bit of a nod, but Corey Seager, high drive, it's tied. postseason moments, runner-up to MVP, going to be here for a longer time, probably going to make a bigger lasting impact than Alex Rodriguez. His season might just be done. He is hitting the IL with hip discomfort, something he has been dealing with for about 2 weeks, he said. But he was heading into Tuesday's game. He had only played the field in just 3 of the last 7 Rangers games. He had a couple of DH days, a couple of days off. That wasn't healing it like they had hoped. And so there's no official timeline for when he will return. This is more about getting him healthy, getting him a healthy, fully healthy offseason, so he can have a normal offseason, unlike last year, where he did not have a normal, fully healthy offseason, and it showed for the first 30, 40 games of the year, where he was terrible. I mean, he was coming off of hip surgery. He was dealing with that and didn't really have a spring training, so he had a spring training at the major league level, was rehabbing at the major league level, and clearly wasn't right. But, I mean, for the last 85 games, basically you throw out those early season numbers, and he's got a 296, 391, 592 slash line, a 963 OPS with 28 home runs in 85 games. That's about a 55-ish home run pace for 162. Now, it has been the bane of Corey Seager's career of just staying healthy in general. For the most part, he has with Texas. Last year, he had a couple of different IL stints, one with the hamstring injury, one with the hand injury. Only played 119 games last year. He might finish his season with only 123 games this season, but still 30 home runs in every single season he's had with the Rangers as a primary shortstop. There are not a lot of shortstops who have done that. Actually, before this year, there were no shortstops. Actually, there was only one shortstop in Major League history as a lefty who had hit 30 home runs, and it was Brad Miller, which is very curious. He's now done it 3 times. I think that Gunnar Henderson is going to pass him for the most home runs by a lefty hitting shortstop in a single season this year. Last I checked, Gunnar Henderson was at 33. He's got till the end of the season to get at least one more. Unfortunately, Seager isn't going to tie his career high with 33 homers this year. I thought he would get that and maybe surpass it by the end of the year, but that is going to allow more time for Josh Smith to play every day. We saw Marcus Semien get the very rare day off yesterday. I don't think he's going to start getting a whole bunch of days off, but it led the way for Zeke Duran, who I think needs to play pretty much every day from now until the end of this season, because there's a chance he's the Rangers' everyday right fielder next year. I mean, in my mind, Adolis is probably going to be relegated to everyday DH at some point next year because the defense has fallen off spectacularly. And I know he is not that old. I mean, he's going into what will be, I think, his age 32 season next year. Yeah, his age 32 season. But usually you don't start getting a whole lot more athletic after your 30th birthday. I'm hoping I'm the difference, and maybe my Major League career will start at 35, but I don't know if that's going to be the case for Adolis. So you start looking at the outfield next year. I mean, Leote has not been great, and if he's your everyday center fielder, that's fine, but not ideal. I think ideally it would be Evan Carter starting every day in center field, but with his second major back injury before his 22nd birthday, you don't know how much you can count on him to stay healthy for the long term. Wyatt Langford is looking like he could be a very viable option in center field. If he's your everyday center fielder and your left fielder is, well, Josh Smith, and then your right fielder is, well, Ezequiel Duran, those guys are both good enough to be solid average everyday guys. I'm still a believer in Ezequiel Duran's ceiling as potentially a first division starter, not just a guy who's enough to be fine if you throw him out there every day in right field, but enough to be, good at 20 to 25, maybe even 30 homer seasons in the future for him, somewhere around an 800 OPS, and playing good defense out there in the outfield because of his absolute cannon of an arm, because he is so gosh darn fast and athletic. I think he's a guy who you've got to get some run and give him some extended looks at the major league level. I think I have seen all I need to see from some of the other guys who might be getting extended looks of Justin Foscue. I don't see much there in terms of a need to keep giving Justin Foscue at-bats. The at-bats have been bad. The results have been terrible. It's frustrating that you're getting that kind of production, a 245 OPS and 25 plate appearances out of a guy who you drafted with your first-round pick in 2020, and that basically every other draft pick will probably in that draft will probably end up having higher career WAR at the major league level than him. Maybe not. But still, Zeke Duran is going to be a part of this team's future, whether that's an everyday player, whether Adolis is staying out there every day in right field, whether Evan Carter is healthy or not, whether Leo Taveras is getting reps as the everyday center fielder. I mean, he's still going to be, he should be on your roster. And if he is your second choice backup infielder / outfielder / super utility guy, that's a darn deep roster that's very, very good. But you need to give him those reps, give him those opportunities to shine, to figure out if he really is that, if he really can be for the long term, pre-All-Star break 2023 Zeke Duran, or if 2024 Zeke Duran is kind of more what he looks like. I think that is an important thing, an important distinction of how you're watching this team moving forward, which goes into our Jack Leiter discourse about whether Bruce Bochy should have taken him out, whether Jack Leiter is a failure of a pick, and how to just in general evaluate some youngsters from now until the end of the season. We're going to talk about that and Kumar Rocker maybe not getting that shot at the big leagues tomorrow, right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by Ibotta. It's summertime, which means it's barbecue season. Stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you won't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can get both. Because, let's be honest. Summer in Texas, it lasts all the way through October. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or that fancy dinner that you've been craving. It's time you join over the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Now, Kumar Rocker is scheduled for his second AAA start on Friday night in Utah. It's in Las Vegas. I'm getting my extremely hitters-friendly AAA parks confused. But he is scheduled to start in Vegas on Friday for his second AAA start, coming off of his first one where he looked absolutely unhittable, nearly perfect through 5 innings, barely ever got to any 3-ball counts, 10 strikeouts, 5 innings, just the one hit, which was a line drive off of his arm that looked like it did more damage to the ball than to him. Other than that, absolutely no base runners, absolutely no chance for anybody to get hit off him. And so I had this thought when I first saw Kumar Rocker in person, the first start, which was, I believe, his next to last. It was his next to last, so his fourth Double-A start, because he only had 4 starts in Double-A. I thought, this guy honestly looks good enough to get major league hitters out right now. But that'd be crazy. That'd be crazy bringing him up to the big leagues at this point. And then I saw him again in Double-A. And while I don't have quite scout level eyes for talent evaluation, I could tell when a guy's locating 98-mile-an-hour fastball, got one of the nastiest breaking balls I've ever seen, a pretty solid changeup, and a cutter that we haven't even seen because he hasn't freaking needed it. I think that's good enough to get big league hitters out right now. That's good enough to get anybody out right now. And so I went and I asked the people who are smarter than me, my friends who are in the talent evaluation business, people who have been doing this longer, who have better eyes for it, who saw him in person or have seen him in person and have a better eye for talent. I'm like, am I crazy for thinking Kumar Rocker should be in the big leagues right now, that he's plenty good enough? And all of them said, yeah, no, he's definitely good enough right now. He's absolutely good enough. But I don't think he's going to get his chance, even though I'm hoping that he does. I think he should, but I don't think that he will, because of this quote from Chris Young in an article by Kennedy Landry of MLB.com. This was in her weekly mailbag when someone asked, is it too much to ask for Kumar Rocker to be in the major leagues? So she asked Chris Young about it, and this is what Chris Young had to say. He said, quote, "We're going to have him on an innings limit as we would any other pitcher who's coming off of surgery. We want to be responsible. That said, this is tremendous progress, and we're just thrilled with where he is right now. That's just getting too far ahead right now, though, when talking about the big leagues. We just can't answer that question. He's had one AAA start. It's too far ahead, end quote. Now, I will translate this. This is very much GM speak from Chris Young here. But this is him saying, yeah, it's probably not going to happen, but we kind of know. Like, the Rangers know that he is good enough to get big leaguers out right now. They know. They also know that even though he's on an innings limit, he could throw those innings anywhere, and it is still just as risky for his arm to blow out in AAA, in Las Vegas or Salt Lake City or Round Rock or whatever, as it is for him to throw on a big league mound. It's just as risky. But I think what this comes down to is service time. Now, this is not to say that this is service time manipulation. Technically, if you really want to squint at it, maybe it could be viewed as that. But the main difference is if Kumar Rocker's arm blows out again, or he has some kind of injury, some, God forbid, catastrophic injury that would take away another season of development for him, which that would throw all kinds of doubt into question. But if he does that at the minor league level, you're not losing any major league service time. That's the difference. But if he comes up to the big leagues and throws a pitch the wrong way or whatever, tweaks his shoulder or something, and he misses next year, then you are missing a year of pre-arbitration great starting pitcher, which is the most valuable asset in Major League Baseball. It is no question. If you can have top end of the rotation, top half, just any kind of starting pitcher that is competent for pre-arbitration money, that is the most valuable thing. And that is kind of what it comes down to, is just, it would be a little risky. It would be an unfamiliar environment. I don't think that Kumar Rocker would be phased. Any other pitcher who had maybe different makeup, you'd want to see, okay, let's get him a taste of the big leagues. Let's let him, figure out what it's like for one start at the end of the year, so that when he comes up next year, it's not a if, it's a when. And it's almost a win is probably the start of the season. If he's healthy, I think there's no way you have 5 better pitchers in your rotation next year than Kumar Rocker. I just don't see a situation where that's happening, unless the Rangers are going to sign, Corbin Burns and Max Fried and bring back Nathan Eovaldi, and then you can look at it and say, okay, well, if we have, Malley and DeGrom and Eovaldi and all those guys, then probably Kumar Rocker's not coming out of camp in your rotation if all those guys are healthy. But the Rangers aren't going to spend, $500 million this offseason. It's just not going to happen. So that puts you in a spot where Kumar Rocker is probably ready, but I don't think he's going to get a chance, even though I think he should, especially on Friday night where the Rangers are probably going to have to go with a bullpen game. But the other Vandy guy is someone that was drawing quite a bit of discussion yesterday on Twitter.com. And if you missed this, God bless you. You probably have better mental health than I do and spend less time arguing about stupid things that don't matter on Twitter. But if you missed it, there was a segment on a certain radio station where Jared Sandler was arguing with someone who I don't want to name, and don't snitch tag, just be better than that, about Kumar Rocker's start. And said radio host, very big radio host that people know and like for some reason, was talking about Jack Leiter being a failure. If your number 2 overall pick isn't an ace and can't be an ace, then that's a failure. And because he gave up 5 runs in 5 innings, that was a failure of a start. And Jared comes in and says, hey, did you watch the game? Did you watch the game? Did you actually see what was going on the hill with Jack Leiter in that start? Why people were saying it was encouraging and not just a failure, and looking beyond the box score? And then the host gets mad about being called out about not watching the game. It acts like that's not relevant information, and that all that matters is the results. And while there is some truth to that, of Jack Leiter did give up 5 runs in 5 innings, and that's not a great start overall. And there also is some truth that Jared Sandler is employed by the team, so he is contractually obligated to be a little bit more optimistic than a more, rational, more objective fan or other person evaluating the team is going to be. But both those things can be true. But if you are one of those people who is viewing the MLB draft like the NFL draft, or like the NBA draft, or even like the NHL draft, in that if you get a guy in the top 5, they've got to be a star, if not an everyday player. If not, that's a failure. I'm sorry, but you just don't know ball. Or specifically, you don't know the MLB draft. Because that's not how this works. There are number 1 picks that don't even reach the big leagues, quite frankly, often in Major League Baseball. A top 5 pick is not guaranteed to be, one of the best players in the league in 3-4 years. It is so much harder than that. There's so many things that can go wrong, especially with a pitcher, especially with a starting pitcher that is, even though he's coming from college, so theoretically they should be a little bit more polished. But Leiter was a COVID kid. He missed a whole season of college development because of COVID. He really only had 1 college season. So he's almost like a high school pitcher. Not quite. He's still a lot more polished. We thought he was a lot more polished, a lot more majorly ready when he was coming out of the draft, but starting a guy in AA, and when that struggles, you can't really send him down, especially when your AA affiliate is so close to your major league team. So there's so many people watching actively and, writing about every single start that Jack Leiter has in his minor league career. It puts so much pressure on the kid. It's not a great way to view it. It's not a great developmental experience. And the ceiling on Jack Leiter was always, at best, probably number 2 starter, which is something the Rangers haven't developed since, I don't know, it's been since the 90s. Maybe Kenny Rogers was the last one that the Rangers developed. But that is if Jack Leiter turns into a number 2 or even a number 3 in this rotation, heck, if he turns into a nasty, nasty closer, it's not quite a win, but it's not a failure. It's absolutely not a failure. Because if picks like that, just the MLB draft in general, it is such a crapshoot at times. Developing pitching prospects is such an incredibly difficult thing. Developing starting pitching prospects is near impossible. Developing an ace is darn near impossible. I just talked about why Kumar Rocker's ascent is so important on a show last week and how few homegrown aces there are. I think I got to 10 homegrown aces that are still with their teams. Even fewer of those are on their first contracts. I mean, one of those homegrown aces, I think I actually got to 11. But Clayton Kershaw is one of those homegrown aces who's still with his team. Obviously, the rarity there. But viewing development like that, and also viewing Jack's individual start like that. I was talking with someone who did know ball a little bit more about being frustrated that Bruce Bochy didn't take Jack Leiter out after 5 innings. Said, why did he not? He could have had a great line. Everything could have been nice. And I said, yeah, probably. But you got to view this season like when I go and watch minor league baseball. I'm going there and not watching for the scoreboard. I'm not watching to see who wins. Often when I'd come home from a Frisco game, my parents would ask me, hey, who won? I'd be like, I have no idea what the score was, but the one guy I was there to look at, he looked really, really good, or he looked really, really bad. And yeah, Leiter could have gotten out there out of 5 innings, but eventually he's going to have to learn how to face a rotation in order a third time through. This time, he didn't do it well. Next time, maybe he does. Maybe next time he gets another learning opportunity. But it is all about growth and development for next year, because next year you're not going to have that time. You're going back to trying to win every single game, trying to compete from day one, and there's not that time to figure things out. That's the only good part about being out of it from now until the end of the year, is you get that 20-game span to kind of figure some things out about your team for next year. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.